I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander, and we'd like to talk to you about embracing new behaviors. In metaphysical New Thought philosophy, we talk a lot about the fact that we live in our minds and not in the world, and our behaviors come from our minds, even though we believe that often they come from other places. Isn't that true, Iris?
Yes, it is. It's true that we are what we think. And so our behavior is definitely from our own minds because everything that we do comes through our mind, first through our mind. And we have to be responsible for what we're thinking, responsible for our own behaviors, and responsible for how we affect others around us. And as we assume that responsibility, assume it, and really assume it, then we're far happier and our lives are more serene and our lives are more trouble-free because we create thought situations through our own thinking and therefore through our own behaviors, and then other people pick it up. And you've seen that with babies. Babies are so open and susceptible to emotion, and when the adults around them are upset or cranky or not feeling well, the baby picks it up and then they act up. And I remember once when my first child was an infant and I had a really bad toothache, and my toothache ached so bad that I felt like crying, but my little son cried almost all night because he was feeling the tension in my body, and I realized it at the time, but I couldn't control it enough to have him not pick that up. And that was a good lesson for me, that we affect the people around us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Our behaviors affect the people around us, and so often we don't think about that, but in truth, that's always the circumstance. And we can think of families where there's a certain behavior dynamic that takes place that's either serene or aggressive or peaceful or more aggressive. And all of our behaviors do create, as we say in metaphysical circles, vibrations. And those vibrations are energies that go out from us. And so while people can see and sense and see and actually see our behavior, they can actually feel our behavior as well, because that behavior creates a vibratory rate that is emitted from us in the form of energy. And of course, a lot of us have dealt with that reality when we walk into a room or we meet a new person, and perhaps we're immediately drawn to that person, or we see a person and we meet them and we feel that that's not a person that we'd like to be with. So this vibratory rate or this vibration that takes place, this energy that is a reality. And of course, in today's scientific circles, we're seeing more studies being done in terms of the dynamic of energy that is emitted from all living matter. And we know, too, that our behaviors emit vibrations, and that is absorbed by the people around us.
Yes, and if we want to make ourselves invisible, we can, in a sense, by just having our energy being very quieted. And sometimes that is a good thing. And when other people around us are upset, if we just deliberately do our deep breathing and just consciously keep our minds calm, and then our bodies will be calm, and then our vibrations will be then more easy for other people to accept. And we've all seen people enter a room and aggressively, and then they just push everyone in front of them, and it's not pleasant. And then we've seen people enter the room poised and just secure within themselves, and then it helps everyone else to feel that way. So we do respond to our environment, and the people around us respond to us. And so it behooves us to remember that. And as we discipline children, whether they're our own children or others or whomever, and as we work in our offices and have the people who work for us, if we want them to respond to us in a nice way, then if we send out the positive energy, then they're up to do that.
And we can change our behavior, can't we?
Exactly.
You know, so many negative people or so many people who act in a certain way will say, I can't change. Well, of course, we can all change. And we know that people who have good behavior can change that into negative behavior. But we know, too, that people who have negative behaviors can change those into positive behaviors.
In fact, we must. If we expect to have a secure and productive life, then we must change our behavior. or we need to keep our behavior in a positive way, and and we must do that if we want to be happy, and then if we want, and then other people around us will be happy.
And that's really important for our behavior to keep people around us happy, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It certainly is, because one, that's what we're supposed to do. I mean, we're supposed to love others, and we show that love through acceptance and happiness. And even when we have a controversy with someone, we can still be, we might say, civilized in our discussions with them, and have them, and then they will react in that way. And those of us who have to deal with other people, I'm thinking right now, a fence needs to be replaced between my neighbor and me. And those neighbors are so careful to not push too hard in saying what they want in the fence. And they're just so thoughtful and considerate. I'm so grateful that they are. But sometimes people can almost go too far in that way, but not really. But when we respect others and want to know what they really want, and then show that we really do want to do that, then it just makes the whole situation so much happier. And that's just one example, a minor example of how we go through life not pushing people, but just accepting them and embracing new ideas. And when we do, then we're the one who reaps the greatest dividend.
Absolutely. And as their behavior is either positive or negative, good or bad, if our response is always consistently good, then that has a great benefit to the entire circumstance, doesn't it?
Yes, and as we think of our own personal behavior, we just need to really evaluate ourselves from time to time, because we need to evaluate ourselves from time to time, not only for how we impact on other people's lives, but how are we living our own life to our own satisfaction? Are we happy with our lives? Are we? Someone said to me one day recently that they thought I stayed so busy in so many different directions, and I said, "Well, I like my life the way it is," and I hadn't thought of it like that before. And then when I was thinking of it later on, I thought, well, I'd be very stupid to not like my life, because we can all change our lives, and we can change them in various ways. And even if we're in a relationship that we are not gaining happiness from, but we need to stay in that relationship, whether it's marriage or whatever, then it's how we treat the other person that's going to determine how we get treated back again. And if it doesn't work out, then we need to change that relationship, whatever the relationship might be, whether it's work or personal or whatever. So we have control of our lives, and we need to keep that control.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to understand that this outflow and inflow of behavior, the way that we behave and the behavior that comes to us, is really what we send out comes back in many ways.
Yes, yes. And there's times when we're not going to be happy with our work, or not going to be happy with the people around us. But if it lasts for a really long time, we truly do the very best we can, we truly do whatever we can, then we're entitled then to make changes, to make drastic changes. And sometimes just talking with let's say we were employed, then just talking with our employer about what makes us unhappy makes a big difference. And that employer might not even realize that we're unhappy, because it might seem fine to that person. So if we just bring it up in a positive, but not self-sacrificing way, but just in a conversational way, and say, there's ideas I'd like to present, it will make a difference. And the same is true in personal relationships. And if we can't get some degree of agreement there, then seek outside help, because there is outside help available for everything. So we can change our behavior just by planning, by realizing what we really want in life, and then planning how to change what we want or to keep what we have.
We can always look at our lives and look at how it is we are living and how it is we're behaving, and determine whether or not this is the life we want. And if it's not, then we can change.
Yeah.
And I think so often in counseling and in spiritual work, we find people who believe that that's not the case, that life is just the way it is, the circumstances are just the way they are, that it's the will of God or something. And I think it's very important for us to understand, just as we touch on this issue of the will of God, that the will of God never changes for any of us. And the will of God is good and only good. And so it's never God's will that anything negative should happen. And it's never God's permission that anything negative should happen. It is the reality that those things happen in our life experience, but that has nothing, little or nothing to do with the will of God. And so we have the ability to change circumstances and situations. And so often, spiritual or religious people give it over to God. Non-religious people give it over to circumstance or situation and say, well, I'm born into this situation and I can't change it. But in fact, we can always change, can't we? We can change our behavior. We can change our environment. We can change the way that we look at life. We can change everything about ourselves. But the change has to begin with us, and we have to take personal responsibility for it. And that's what we talk so much about. And that doesn't detract at all from the divine aspect of life. It has everything to do with the physical and the divine connection that we have, which empowers us and gives us such limitless potential as co-creators, as we say so often, with God, to create the life that we determine that we want and need. And of course, we hope that we're all going to have a positive and affirmative life. And that's what we talk about. And we do want to stress the fact that each individual has the ability to change in every way. And that the choice is always ours.
Yes, and as we look at our own lives, when we all learn, we gain a great deal of knowledge as we go through life. That's what life is a great deal about. But knowledge is not the only answer. It's wisdom is the real key. So wisdom is how we use the knowledge we have, and that is putting, again, I mentioned self-responsibility a great deal, but I think we have to think in terms of I'm responsible for whatever. And so as we use the knowledge we have, we're using then our own personal innate wisdom. And again, if we look at life in a happy way, and if we look to God as being all loving and all good, and He gave us the opportunity to live here on earth and change whatever we can change in our own right, so that when we go back to God, we take back a greater aspect of being than we brought into the earth, into that given lifetime. And so then we can then be responsible and use our own innate wisdom to change whatever we need to change and to live the life as we would really like to live it. And it wouldn't matter how much money we have or don't have, it's how we live with whatever we do have. And it wouldn't matter if we have a mate or if we have children or don't have children. None of it isn't any of that. It's all within ourselves. It's all within self. And so we just accept whatever we do have, change what we can, and then live our life with love and thoughtfulness toward others, and then we then feel fulfilled.
And that goes to the very heart of changing and embracing new behaviors, doesn't
Yes,
it? Because our behaviors come from that, our actions come from that. We'd like to pause at this point in the program and offer you the opportunity to receive some literature so that you can continue to study the ideas and concepts we're sharing with you.
We would like to offer you the opportunity to receive one of these free booklets to further your understanding of the New Thought message of confident living. Each month we will feature a different booklet, which will be mailed to you free and postage paid. Simply address your request to Confident Living at P.O. Box 7726, Long Beach, California, 90807.
Let's go back to this issue of wisdom. I'm really intrigued by it. Of course, we spend a lot of time, or some time, at the fellowship talking about it and in our work. But it is a great source for all of us to understand that we do have wisdom within ourselves, don't we? And of course, some of us think that that's something much higher and more mighty than most of us. But we can have, and we do have wisdom within.
Yes, each person does. Each person has that God flame within them. Some people say God spark. I like to think it's more than a spark, but it's the God flame is within us, and that God aspect of our own beinghood, every person has it, and every person lives from that to more or less extent. And as we live a life with loving others and accepting, and what is love but accepting, and trying to help others when we can, but not be a busybody and not get into other people's way, but just help them if we can. As we live that life of usefulness, then, and usually most of us have to put in a lot of years before we reach that stage that we can really be happy enough with what we're accomplishing. But a lot of young people have it too, and they're born with it. I think the babies coming in are very advanced souls, and they have innate wisdom. And what is that innate wisdom? It's just living from the God self within. It's living from the highest aspect of our own beinghood. That's another way to say the same thing. And so as we live from that highest aspect of our own beinghood, we're using the knowledge that we have, transferring it into wisdom, which is a more personal thing. Knowledge is something we gain from others. Wisdom is what comes from within us. So then as we live from that point of wisdom, it wouldn't matter what our station is in life. It wouldn't matter what kind of work we do. It wouldn't matter. All that matters is how we express our own self. It's how we express to others.
And that's the new behavior that we're talking about,
Yes,
isn't it?
yes.
We're talking about the behavior that comes from operating from and through our higher self and claiming the reality of who and what we are as children of God, and the understanding that everybody, not just some, not that there's nothing to do. You know, so often in religion and in spiritual circles, we believe, well, we have to do this or do that, or we have to learn this or learn that. And in fact, all we have to do is to understand who and what we are. And it's important for us also to say that we never are talking about the fact that anyone needs to change their religion or change their faith at all. We're talking about universal principles that we teach and believe that are applicable to every living being on this planet equally. And we think that every person is a perfect and whole child of God, and every person has the ability to embrace that reality of the divine within. And it doesn't matter how we express it on a religious level. You know, I think we spend a lot of time wasting our time on religion, don't we?
Religiosity.
Religiosity, yeah. And so it doesn't matter any church that people go to, or if they don't go to any church at all. It has to do with how our behavior comes from that divine center of who and what we are, and the reality that nothing that we ever do can separate us from the presence and the power of God. And so many times we spend a lot of time trying to convince people, or people try to convince other people, that certain circumstances, situations, or behavior is going to separate them from God. But the fact is that no one gets separated from God, and that our behavior becomes negative, and that can move us away from our realization and full understanding of who and what we are. But that when we come back to the true understanding and realization of who we are, then our behavior is aligned with divine mind, and then we have right action and right life, and we have a fulfilled and positive and affirmative life. And then we're able to operate from a center of absolute love, and we're able to embrace and accept all people, and we're able to give up the hurting and the harming and all of the negative aspects of life.
Yes, indeed. And we never know how our lives affect the lives of others. I can remember when I first moved to Long Beach 47 years ago, and two different people who were not related and didn't know each other told me about a man who was a maintenance man at the Newberry's store in downtown Long Beach. And they had a lunch counter there, and he took care of the maintenance part of the aspect of that. And he happened to be black, and he happened to have innate wisdom of unheard of proportion, because it's like he affected people's lives so greatly. And unfortunately, the man died before I heard of him. I would have wanted to have met him and had a conversation with him. It would have been such an honor too, because from hearing from those two different people, that man affected so many lives. And he was so kind and thoughtful to other people. And I know that he was a very high soul who was there in that position as maintenance man too. And very often masters come in to very humble positions so they can live a life of touching specific lives. And then every life they touch is, every life they come in contact with is touched deeply on a very deep spiritual level. So if we can remember how other people affect our lives, or we hear stories about other people have affected so many lives, then we can just remember that our lives affect others too. And we don't have to fight to have people remember. We don't have to work at it, because if we do, then we defeat our purpose. It's just simply living the life the best we can, accepting all people and loving all as the God within them. And it's just like we're taught, love thy neighbor as thyself. And we have to also love and respect ourselves as we respect and love other people. So when we do that, we live such a much happier life, and others around us are lifted. And so, and I know, and you know, the people who lift you. I mean, you come in contact with certain people and your spirit's just soar. And then other people, you don't feel any better when you see them than you did before. So if we can all remember that we do affect the people around us, and if it's in a positive way, then it's a great big plus.
And we can embrace that new behavior anytime we choose. And we can become that type of person anytime we choose. And it comes back to a decision that we make. And we need to make it in a conscious way. And we need to look at our behavior and look at how it is we're affecting the people around us, and how it is that we're projecting our image of life and our image of truth to those in our families, in our workplaces, and those who don't even know us. It is our behavior that really speaks loudly as to that which is within us and that which is innately expressing itself through us.
Yes, and that's why we're here on earth in the first place, to help and lift others and to help and lift ourselves to an ever higher level. And if we change deliberately, embrace new behaviors in a positive way, then we're living the life as we're supposed to have lived it. And that doesn't mean that we have to change our station in life, change the work that we do. It doesn't mean we have to. It's just be the best person we can and the happiest and most positive and outgoing wherever we are and whatever we are. And sometimes we stay home all the time, and it's just the people who come in contact with infrequently. But then we're helping lift those.
And it is amazing how many people's lives we can touch if we want to, isn't it?
Yes, yes. And if we, or if we send out a positive vibrations, we were talking about vibration earlier, and everything is vibration. And so we send out those positive vibrations. And then when we do, we're helping to lift. And you and I talk often about the mass consciousness or global brain. Well, it makes a big difference. It's all the difference. That's what it is. It's whatever people send out. And the more people who are sending out the positive aspect, then the more the global brain is affected in a positive way. And the mass consciousness is there for us all the time, and we draw from it. And so there is a theory that that's what causes hurricanes and other storms and earthquakes and so forth. If the negative aspect of the global brain or the mass consciousness grows so greatly, then it causes the earth upheaval. And it makes sense, doesn't it?
It does. It really has to do with the fact that as you put thoughts together, the more thoughts you put together, the more power you create. And that powerful thought dynamic creates a vibratory rate that causes things to happen. And we know that is a reality when we see, for instance, mass healings. The one thing is when we bring 5 people together for a little healing service, you have something that happens. If you bring 100 people together, you have something else that happens. If you bring 1,000 people together, all focused upon that one thought process, then spontaneous things begin to happen. And of course, the more people that we bring into like thinking or like behavior, then the more dynamic the power becomes that comes from the focus of the thought process.
Yes, and you can actually see that in meditation, in groups where the group is meditating, and you can see the light, but then after the group has meditated for a time, you see ever greater light, and that's what it is. And then you can send that light out or use it right there for healing. And we've had wonderful results with the healing, with that healing energy that the group brings through. And the healing, of course, comes from God, but each individual helps bring that energy through. And you and I both seen wonderful healings, and then we send it out, whether or not we consciously send it. The angels of prayer take that energy where it's most needed, and it's palpable.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see it all, you can see it. So we know that we're making a difference in the world, and if that makes a difference, everything makes a difference, either positively or negatively.
Absolutely, and our behavior makes a difference.
Yeah.
The way that we behave makes such a tremendous difference. And just in the last minute or two that we have, I think we need to really touch on the fact that our behavior affects children so much, doesn't it?
Oh, exactly.
And all of us who have the responsibility of being around children need to be aware of how our behavior affects them, and of course how their behavior affects us. And as you said, as they come through with such a fresh and positive understanding of the truth and reality of the God within. And so they are divine as we are divine, but as we become older, we become less aware of that. And so our behavior around children needs to always be supportive and always needs to be positive and affirmative.
Yes, and that way they grow in a happy, positive way. And you can see that in children, and it's so beautiful to see. And the children today seem almost transparent. That everything they do and say just seems, but they're so, again, their wisdom is so great. They just know things. These babies that are coming in just know. And they can see something done one time and they know how to do it themselves. And sometimes they want to do too much, like turn on the dishwasher and all sorts of things, because they see other people doing it and they want to do it too. But when they're just tiny, they do those things. But it's really exciting to see that humankind has evolved to a higher level. And of course, that's what lifetime after lifetime, that's what we're here to evolve to, an ever higher level. But it seems that sometimes we take giant leaps in consciousness. It's just like during the Renaissance that must have happened. And now it's happening again, and perhaps it's happened in between times, who knows?
Absolutely. And our behavior has so much to do with all of the things that we've been talking about. And so we invite you to embrace new behaviors in your life. And we hope that the ideas and concepts that we've shared with you today have been useful. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Mike and Iris would like to extend a cordial invitation for you to join them this Sunday morning at 11 a.m. for our weekly celebration service at the beautiful Seaport Marina Hotel at the corner of Pacific Coast Highway and 2nd Street, adjacent to the Marina Pacifica and Marketplace shopping centers. There will be a guided meditation, prayers, spirited music, and a dynamic, life-changing New Thought message. Please join us this Sunday. You will be warmly welcomed into the company of like-minded, positive, and uplifting people. And remember, whatever your dream, whatever your vision, you can attain it through confident living.